All right, welcome back to Automate Live. Here on day one at Automate, we are just getting started, and I'm very excited for our next guest. We have Heather Carroll, CRO at Path Robotics. Heather, great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here, Chris.
And this is not our first conversation, nor is it the first time that Path and I'm Chris Luecke with Manufacturing Happy Hour. It's not the first time Path and Manufacturing Happy Hour have chatted. And actually, I believe it was a year ago, a little over a year ago,
Yeah,
we were hanging out on your home turf in Columbus, Ohio, doing a live show.
yeah.
And that was around the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Path Robotics, which really started as like a robotics welding company, was really starting to make that deliberate transition to being more of a physical AI company for the industrial space. You
Yeah.
know, tell us about that evolution a little bit. What does it mean to be thinking bigger about how you're serving the industrial space at Path?
Yeah, it was probably about a year ago when you were there. I know I joined about a year and a half ago. And when we started out about 10 years ago
Mhm.
in the basement of Case Western with two guys that were working on their PhDs that were born and raised in Ohio, that were working on AI and physical AI at the time for humanoid robotics and computational neural networks. They came out of that with an idea. How can we take what we've been working on and learning in school and apply that to the real world? And so, growing up in Ohio and working in their dad's fab shop and welding at the age of 8 years old, they realized that was a very, very hard problem that needed to be solved.
Mhm.
And it seemed like one that AI was just primed to solve for.
Yeah.
So, when the company began, we started out focusing on welding, and the idea was to go out and broadly talk to small manufacturers to learn what were the hardest problems and where did we see that we needed the most help. And
Mhm.
in doing that, we began with welding, started collecting data. And over the last 8 years, we've got over 200,000 hours of real world welding data, which is incredibly expensive and difficult to collect,
Mhm.
and you can't use synthetic data for training physical AI. So the evolution happened as we had more and more robots in the field, more and more experience collecting this data and training a foundation model how to weld. It became pretty clear that we were onto something very special, and we had a unique position with all of the data collected to
Mhm.
broaden this and move more into upstream from just small manufacturers to mid-sized manufacturers to now you'll see us working with very large companies solving very complex problems that physical AI is needed to solve.
Yeah, maybe let's go into physical AI a little bit further because, as you mentioned, hey, basement Case Western 10 years ago, Path has been in this space for a long time. So I'd love to hear your perspective as to why has physical AI become one of the biggest topics in the industrial space right now? You know, what challenges are manufacturers trying to solve where this could be the secret sauce?
Yeah. So welding robots and robotics in particular is not new. It's been
Hmm.
around for 50 plus years or more. And so a lot of times people think, well, that has been solved. We can automate, automotive production lines, and there's lots of welding robots out there. But that's true for very, very high volume, low mix
Hmm.
solutions. And so, where physical AI comes in is when you're working with environments where you have very high mix but low volume,
Hmm.
you need something that can adapt. You need something that can see the joint type and the product that it's about to work on
Yeah.
and be able to recognize what it's looking at and make decisions and adapt. And that is where the training and the reinforcement learning comes for physical AI.
Yeah. Adaptability came across loud and clear in that answer. I'm going to ask you about a slightly different topic now. A term that certainly you and I are hearing about more in the industry right now is reindustrialization, reindustrializing American manufacturing.
Yeah.
How does Path fit into this story about reindustrializing the American industrial base?
Yeah, so this one I get really excited about. This is probably where I spend the majority of my time is working on policy initiatives
Hmm.
and trying to help both small, mid-sized manufacturers and policymakers figure out how we can support one another.
Mhm.
We have a great need in this country to reindustrialize our base. And the
Mhm.
problem is, with the skilled labor shortage that we have, we are running into an issue where we've got demand. We can bring that demand in to
Mhm.
reshore and bring manufacturing back, but we have a very, very big problem of skilled labor shortage. So, how can we bring these two things together and
Mhm.
help reindustrialize the base? And the answer is to provide automation that can augment and help with the labor shortage, not replace the workers, but focus on areas where we don't have the workers
Mhm.
and be able to augment that. And so there is a wonderful spot for companies like Path and others in the physical AI space
Yep.
to help our manufacturers address this labor crunch and crisis and be able to bring back and reshore some of this work.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up tying in physical AI to that reindustrialization answer as well. The two are definitely inherently tied together. We will get back to physical AI in a little bit, but I also want to ask you about being based in Columbus, Ohio, right? Case Western to Columbus. I mean, there's a lot of Ohio here. Why is it important to build a company like this in Ohio? What advantages are there to having so many manufacturers like at your doorstep in that area?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that is critically important when building solutions, particularly around physical AI, is domain knowledge. Welding is very difficult.
Mhm.
It is an
Mhm.
art, and it's very hard to do. And so, by building a company in the heartland, in the core of the manufacturing sector, you've got access to a lot of people that have the experience and the knowledge that is required to
Mhm.
bring that subject matter expertise in to train the solutions on what are the things that are unique to this space. And I think Columbus is great for that. In addition to that, we have great opportunities there with it being everybody refers to it as Silicon Valley moving to the heartland. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of investment that's flowing into the space, and there's a lot of incentives and infrastructure that's being built around it, which makes it also a very exciting place to be.
Yeah, I remember when I think it was Drive Capital kind of started that trend back in like 2010. Columbus was one of those first hotbeds of like investment, not only in startups but like manufacturing startups as well.
Yeah.
Another question I have around Ohio is the state seems to be doing a lot of things right. Maybe this ties into your involvement in policy as well. The state seems to be doing a lot of things right in terms of like incentivizing manufacturing, making it a great spot for companies like Path to grow. What can other regions, other states learn from that? Because people are going to listen to this all across the country, maybe in some cases around the globe. What can other parts of, let's keep it here to the US. What can other regions learn from what Ohio is doing right?
Yeah, I would say I actually was in a policy session on Thursday at the University of Michigan, and we were talking about this topic. And
Mhm.
um, the ARM Institute brought this up that we should look for best practices. Where are certain areas of the country doing really well and moving the needle?
Mhm.
And one of those is the Ohio Manufacturers Association.
Okay.
We should have a way and a mechanism for these other regional organizations to learn from one another, and that's a great example of it.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job. We're seeing lots of new manufacturing and incentives flowing in, so
Mhm.
we should be sharing those best practices across the regional groups to
Yeah.
try and help spread that knowledge and success.
So if I'm hearing you right, the Ohio Manufacturing Association is one of the more active, let's say, manufacturing associations out there that's driving real change, connecting community members, etc. And other states, regions, ecosystems have an opportunity to learn from that. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's go back to physical AI as we start to wrap up our conversation. When a manufacturer or an industrial company is successful with physical AI, what changes for their business? Paint the picture of that.
Yeah. So the biggest change is the ability to handle the capacity and throughput increases. What we hear often is I've got an existing facility that I've been in for 30 years. I
Mhm.
can't afford the time or the capital expenditure to go and build a brand new
Yeah.
building. That's going to take too long. I'm seeing surge in demand right now. So, how can I accommodate this additional capacity in the square footage that I have today? So, when physical AI works well, they're able to take on that new work and deliver without being constrained as much as they are today by the labor shortage.
Mhm.
So think of it as someone who has a facility now, they cannot start a second shift. They cannot find the labor to run a second shift. We hear this a lot. So demand is there, labor is not. So
Yeah.
how can we augment that with physical AI where we can extend the operation so you now can add that second shift and take on that additional work in the same existing footprint? And that's the type of thing when we do business cases with these small and mid-sized manufacturers that gets them most excited is this additional capacity, the additional orders
Mhm.
and volume they can take on by being able to unlock that throughput.
Yeah. Demand is there, labor is not. Relevant to all our conversations around physical AI, relevant to all our conversations around reindustrialization. Let's look out just a little bit further. In the next 5 years, how do you see physical AI changing the way manufacturing gets done? And what role is Path going to play in that?
My hope is Path will play a very large role helping to be on the forefront with these manufacturers and be part of the solution. I think it's hard to tell 5 years from now. I mean, a year and a half is wildly different from where it was when I first joined. But I would say I think what we're going to find is these solutions are going to be deployed in more environments. And with more deployments, more data is collected. And with
Mhm.
more data, we get better responses. We get better training of the models and better production. So my hope is that we see a lot more adoption and rollout of these solutions, and we see manufacturers continuing to grow and continuing to grow their business and
Yeah.
reshoring.
Well, it's an exciting time. It's exciting to see how Path has been part of that journey and continues to evolve to be relevant for years to come. It's always very fun seeing what you're up to. Hey, if you're out there, go to Columbus, Ohio. We've been talking about Ohio and Columbus. Get out there, visit them as well, like I did out there. Heather, always great catching up with you. Thanks so much for jumping on Automate Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll be back here with more interviews very soon.